in the new life. Good. I don't know whether you are aware of the conditions of new life, because at the time when we went out in new life, we were aware of the conditions that we had to observe, you see, and we had to live through them. And the most important one was that we should remain cheerful all the time in Baba's presence. We must never have a long face in presence of Baba, as it is said, and that we should always keep cheerful, happy. Well, whatever be your feelings within you, that's a different thing. Nobody cared for that. But when you face Baba, you have to face him with a broad smile. Smile as when you call out cheese, you see. It's said. So that was one of the most important conditions, and any failure in that would mean that Baba had the right to send his companion back to his home. Of course, there were many more conditions, but this was the most important one. And it was very difficult for us all. On 16th October 1949, we started with Baba for the new life. We went first to south of India, a place called Belgaum from here. There we camped, and it was called the training period for Baba's companions in new life. It was a sort of a training camp where Baba trained us. You see, it's very difficult when people are holding certain positions in life, when people had never bent themselves, so to say, or never cared to carry any loads or labored. It's very difficult to adjust one's life to circumstances which are quite extraneous, you see. Suppose a person who holds a very good position, is very wealthy, and if he is all of a sudden told or commanded by God, you see, that just leave everything and go in the streets and beg for food, it will be very difficult for him. He won't be able to do it as he should do it. He will, of course, obeying the command of God, but he won't be able to adjust to the circumstances. So this training camp was meant for training. So at that time we were the women, the 4 women that went with Baba, and the rest of the men companions were camped, and Baba also was camped, and well, it was a happy period, no doubt. Baba was our head companion. One night it so happened, while I was with Baba, he woke me up from sleep, and he expressed his desire that he would like to take a round, you see, in the camp area, to see how his companions are. So I went with Baba, I went out, and he strolled hither, thither, and came to a spot where I spotted from a distance too a man sitting. The rest of the people there, the rest of the companions were fast asleep. So Baba went behind the person, you see, and tapped on his back, and he got surprised. He was Dr. Daulat Singh there, and he was sobbing at the time. And he was so surprised to see Baba at the dead of the night there. And sobbing means he had broken the conditions. When he faced Baba, he ought to have faced him without any sobs. Well, Baba inquired there, and he said that, well, it was not much, Baba, and that he thought that he was all alone in the night, and therefore he ventured to give vent to his feelings. And Baba told him to relax and not worry, but that he had broken the condition of new life and he will be sent back the next day. So that's how Baba's keeping a watchful eye, you see, over his companions, brings in a story which has touched our hearts ever since. It's all about Dr. Daulat Singh. So we went back, we slept. I don't know whether Baba slept or not. I don't know whether Baba ever slept, but we were all asleep. So Next morning, there was that, what do you call it, you see, a conference, you see, of all the companions, and Baba at the head, and Dr. Daulat Singh was called. He was asked the reason why he was so sad, whether there was any difficulty for him to continue in his new life. Why was he sobbing? What was the reason for his weeping? Baba, being the new life companion, he behaved like a human being as one of the companions, and Dr. Daulat Singh, being an old man, he said, Baba, the only thing was that the only thing that made him sob was the thought of his daughter. The rest is such a rosy picture for him in this life now that he has dedicated to this cause. He couldn't dare to say the words at the feet of his master Meher Baba, because Meher Baba prohibited even that expression through speech, you see, in new life. He would want us to take him as our companion, as a friend, you see, as our elder brother. So he said, everything was fine with him except that thought, and that thought made him weep last night. What was it? Said, her marriage was fixed prior to his having given that last words, prior to his leaving Ahmednagar for this new life. So Baba said, why did you, what made you weep? What's that in that? He says, when her marriage was fixed and I was the one who had taken a leading part, and the date was fixed, and the date was after 16th of October 1949, not knowing that we would have to leave for new life. All of a sudden Baba had called him there to Meherabad along with other people there to hear the news, the plan about the new life, and that very day it was decided whether those who wanted to come should give their answers, you see. So it so happened that he had previously fixed the date, not knowing that he would not be present for the wedding, and he wanted to keep his word with Baba. So when he left his place to join Baba for the trip, his family didn't like the idea at all. And worst of all was his daughter, who taunted him, saying that the very fact that he was leaving her, knowing fully well that her wedding is so close, made her feel that he was not her father, and that touched him deeply, you see. And that was the thought. That night when he sat there was the night, you see, of her wedding, and he remembered her, and that's how he started sobbing. So all this is being narrated by Dr. Daulat Singh to Baba in answer to the query. So Baba said, whatever be the cause, what happened is that I somehow or other happened to go in the night and to see you sobbing, and I cannot have a companion who has broken the new life order. So you'll have to leave. So there was no other go. One had to obey Baba's orders implicitly in new life, and we were all very surprised, you see, as to he is the one who is absolutely innocent. He never went to Baba, never approached Baba with a long face. It was in the dead of the night. Nothing was there. Nobody could prohibit anybody weeping within oneself. It was like being all alone. But now Baba having spotted him, and Baba says that he had to leave this company and go away from him. So that also touched us most. Not knowing that he would be the only one who would be having the credit of having, so to say, led the new life away from Baba, which would please Baba most. So, well, the verdict was that he had to leave the camp. So he left the camp. And it was a sight, you see, which touched us most. And the sight was such that we all would have started sobbing, you see, and we would have been sent back too. But somehow or other we controlled ourselves and seeing the old man, you see, with a bundle of little belongings that was allowed there. So carrying that and going back home. But Baba told him before leaving that he should continue with his new life, away from Baba, not in the company of Baba. And he should go back home, stay in his house, go outside, first of all beg for food and eat that, not eat at home. He must beg for his food. And lead the new life. Keep all the conditions, keep himself completely cheerful, be very kind, not cruel to others or anything else. There were many, many conditions. So he continued with that. He went back home and we did not know what happened there. And we, of course, after the training period was over, Baba took us towards the north of India. We left the place. Occasionally we remembered Dr. Daulat Singh. We talked of him in presence of Baba. Baba also remembered him. And days passed by, weeks and months and a year and a half passed by and all that. In 1951, it so happened, I think, that we came back to the south of India again. And near about that place from where he was sent away, not exactly the same place. It was in Satara. One day we were sitting with Baba, the New Life companions, and in the midst of the conversation, Baba points out on the roadside, and I look there and he tells me through his gestures to find out who the person is sitting there on the culvert there on the roadside. I go there, and to my great surprise I find Dr. Daulat Singh sitting there. We met, we embraced, and he inquired whether Baba was here. I said yes, he was there, and that it was Baba who sent me. He was so happy, full of joy. And then he started narrating to me this. I said, wait now, I must go and tell Baba about it. It will be a great day today, you see, to have you once again in our midst. And I went and told Baba. Baba called him there. And he was hungry. He continued his life begging for food and all that. So Baba, first of all, made him sit down, and then with his own hands he gave food to Dr. Daulat Singh in his begging bowl. And then he said, how is it that he has left his home and has come here to such a distance begging for food and continuing his new life? And then he tells us the stories. And the story is that when he returned home, it so happened that for a few days it was all right. The marriage had taken place, that is, the wedding had taken place, and they were happy to see him. He remained there. He didn't eat the food there. He went out and begged for his food on the streets. And for a day or two, of course, it was thought that, well, it was something very odd, but they didn't mind, the family. On the third day, naturally, the family remonstrated, and they said it doesn't look good for a family of our status that the head of the family should go out and beg for food. It's a reflection on the other members of the family. So he said, well, it's the order that I have accepted, and that's how I have to go out and live my life. This is how you're going to live that life all the years that you are here on earth. He says, yes, that's the order now that I have accepted. They didn't like the idea. They tried to bring some sense into his head. Says, well, if you want to beg for food at our place, you see, we are supposed to give you. Nothing of the sort. He had to carry out all the commands that were there of Baba, fixed for the companions of New Life. So then they went out, the family went out to the heads of the community there. He belonged to the Sikh community. Dr. Daulat Singh, by the way, came from Kashmir during the days of the partition of India, and when the original India was divided into Pakistan and India as it is called now. He was holding a very responsible position there, very influential man there. He was the medical practitioner, very well-known medical practitioner in Kashmir, Srinagar. He was also the mayor of the place, you see. And he was the one who was by the side of Chanji, Baba's personal secretary, you see, private secretary. You have heard of Chandji? Yeah, so he was there. At the time when Chandji breathed his last, he was the one who arranged for his burial, funeral and burial over there in Kashmir. Chandji is buried in Kashmir. So, he was close to Baba for so many years, but then he came closer still in New Life, and closest during the ordeal that he passed through after he left Baba, you see. He had to leave Baba because of Baba's orders and stayed at home. So then the family members went and consulted the heads of the community, begging them to bring some sense into the head of this man, old man, who somehow or other seemed to have lost all senses of society and community, and he was bringing the community to disrepute by going out on the streets and begging for food from anybody's hands and from anybody. They didn't like the idea. So there was a meeting held, and there he was admonished, you see, by the heads of the society. But he said that he was helpless and he could do nothing. He had to lead that life because he had determined to live such a life. The society was the heads of the society, community were helpless, and it so happened that within a few days he was actually driven out, shooed out as it is called here in India, means beaten with shoes, and just was thrust out of his own house by his own family, kicked out of his house. Then he went and lived on the streets, continuing with his new life. He couldn't raise his finger, you see, to his family because the conditions of new life were such that he had to be kind and generous and forgiving and charitable towards others. So it mattered very little. He had already left his home on 16th of October 1949 when Baba and his companions left for new life from Meherabad. So it was nothing. It was just a sojourn over here. Well, he had come in obedience to Baba's order that he should go back to his place, to his family. So he went there. Now the family has driven him out, so he goes out and lives on the streets. On the streets there, the Sikh community in itself is such, it's very respectable, considered to be a very respectable community, very influential, very rich, and hardly one finds a beggar, you see. I haven't seen personally, I haven't seen a single beggar, you see. So, to find a Sikh beggar on the streets in that community, in the locality, is something very surprising. And the community could not stand that. So, sections of community were upset with it, and they drove him out from that particular section of the locality, and then another locality and another locality, till a time came when he was thrown out of the city. He was threatened that he must leave the city. If he wanted to beg and continue this life, he was thrown out of the city, so he left the place. He went out. So then he started wandering from place to place. He wandered for many years, you see. For many months. It was a year and a half now. A year and 3/4, nearly 2 years. So during his wanderings, naturally he wandered into that city called Satara, and Baba was there. So Baba pointed him out, and he contacted Baba, and that's how he told us the story. It was a very touching story, and how he had to bear all the insults and brunt. So Baba then told him that how blessed he was, that he had observed the new life away from him. It was easy for his companions to be in new life while Baba was by their side, but it was most difficult under the circumstances that he was put in. And he said he was blessed that he had continued with the new life, and that Baba was very happy. Now Baba on his own absolves him from his new life, and he orders him to once again start the practice, medical practice, go back to his home, completely change the dress and change the way of life that he was leading, and be at home with his family practicing. So he went back, And just before he left Baba, Baba said that there will come a day when Baba on his own will visit his house. Till such time he shouldn't try to seek Baba. And Baba would very soon leave the place, he said, and continue his new life. So this Dr. Daulat Singh went back home, and it is reported later on by him, when we met him again, that he was accepted with open arms, that he had changed his way of life, and now that he became the earning member in the house, there was a complete change, you see, and the family who had driven him out, kicked him out of his own home, accepted him because he was the earning member, and that he seemed to be living in accordance with the, what do you call, the codes of the society, you see. And he was accepted in the family. But his heart was set on Baba, and he just knew that all what he did was, he obeyed Baba. The society thought that, well, he had gone crazy and he had returned back to his normal senses. But he was much more normal than the whole society. And he was the one who obeyed Baba's instructions. Now it so happened that we continued with our new life. Baba came back and went away, left that place called Satara, and then we went to Hyderabad again for new life and all that, for the Mananash period. And it so happened that after he completed his Mananash period, then he went out. Then he went abroad, you see, in 1952 to the West, and he met with that accident, as you know, and he returned and he traveled and toured again. It was called, just in the Fiery Free Life it was called, you see. So at that time I was driving the car, and one day we happened to be at the place, the same city where Dr. Daulat Singh was. So Baba on his own remembered the visit that was due there, and well, I said I can find out the house. I did not know the address, but it was so simple to find him out because people in the town knew that crazy doctor, you see.